Have you heard about Anchor? Well, it's one of the easiest ways to create a podcast. Not only is it 100% free, but it has a variety of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or a computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast to other sites such as Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many others for you. And Anchor even allows you to make money from your podcast without a required minimum listenership. So whether you've been in the podcasting game for a long time or you're completely new to it, Anchor is so user-friendly that it's basically your one-stop shop for making a podcast. So what are you waiting for? Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. You're listening to First Paso. Because sometimes you simply need someone to help you take that first paso. Hello and welcome to First Paso, a show where we learn together how to take that first paso toward becoming the best versions of ourselves. My name is Candice Olushala, and today's guest is a friend of mine from undergrad. He sat next to me in orchestra for a few years. We were French horn buddies together, and we always had a blast in the back of orchestra. We were always cracking up, joking, but we played awesome when it was time to play. So it's so cool to see where life's taken him and the things that he's doing. And I want you guys to get to know who he is as well. He has some really cool stories to tell. So without further ado, here's my friend Jace Coston. Yo, bro, what's up?
Yay.
How you doing?
Thanks for having me. Delighted to be here.
Yes. You're in Colorado. How are they doing out there with the quarantine?
Yeah, so it is beautiful spring, and I'm enjoying none of it because I'm sitting on my floor, working from home.
Rough.
No, just kidding. I'm getting outside a ton. It's beautiful. It's a great state. I wish that everyone could travel here all the time, but maybe stay away for a little while longer.
Just a little bit. Don't run to Southwest too eagerly. I want to rein it in.
Yeah.
Rein it in a little bit. I mean, but everything is like all the fun stuff to do in Colorado would probably be closed. So it probably would not be the time to try.
Yeah, I mean, there's the ski hills are closed early, unfortunately. But national parks, for the most part, are still kind of open, and hiking was never off the table. So there's still lots of outdoor activities to do.
Yeah, I hear that there's a lot of really good nature things to do in Colorado. So that wouldn't be a bust. I'm not telling you all to go run out there because, the Rona, but just for a thought for future, in the case that it becomes safe at some point, hopefully in 2020, to go to Colorado. That would be nice. So
for sure.
That's
for sure. The unofficial theme of Colorado is the mountains are calling and I must go. So
yes.
I mean, it's not unofficial. I just made that up. But I think that's a real.
That was totally his. But I like that.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, I'm gonna have to make it out there sometime after Rona passes us by. So we'll table that experience for another day, Jace. Don't let me forget.
Yeah.
Don't let me forget. All right. So why don't you go ahead and tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a strategy and business consultant for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. I've been here for almost 4 years now. 4 years this month, actually.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That is
a little hard to believe.
Crazy. Yeah. That's awesome, though.
It is absolutely the dream organization for me to be working for. I believe wholeheartedly in the mission of sport and how it brings together the world for the better, for peace and for competition, which I think is extremely important. And it's such an honor to work for the best athletes in the world and support them however I can. Even though I don't get to see athletes in my everyday life, really, I still get to have that little bit of interaction with them through my coworkers or when I'm at a games. And that's just the most inspiring thing, being a amateur athlete.
Aww.
I love to see how amazing that they are. And to try and just be even a quarter of what they are is my goal.
Aw, that's so nice. That that has to be intimidating and inspiring all in one, to be around some of the world's greatest athletes out there. But then at the same time, you get to realize that they're totally regular people and fun and goofy and do exactly what you do. So that's super nice that you've had that experience, which is just mind-boggling to me from where we were at Southern to now. It's like, how now, brown cow, did we make it here? But here we are. So then for you, what for you is a First Paso moment that is significant for your journey?
I feel like I have kind of several. I grew up within the Adventist school system for my entire life, all the way through undergrad. Mm-hmm. And when I graduated and was ready to step out into the real world and get a real person job, and
right.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do exactly, but I was kind of headed towards law school at that point.
I remember that.
And so my initial step then was to go work at a law firm in Chattanooga for a couple of years, which not exactly a huge step, but a step out of the bubble that we all lived in for so long, and into criminal defense and all that kind of stuff, which is just, individuals who I am not similar to, but can definitely empathize with, and was honored to work for and be able to help in any way that I could. That was a huge mind shift for me to try and figure out how that works in the real world, and not just going to church every Saturday.
Right.
People's lives are very different than mine.
Yes. Wow. Okay, so then from there, because obviously you're not doing law right now, so
I am not.
It's a little different, little segue. So how did we get from there to here? Because I remember when you were, I guess, like a pre-law, if we want to say Southern had that, like a pre-law major. And I remember you going to do the internships and work at a law firm and all that stuff. And then it was like Olympics. So what happened? What was going on in you that you were just like, I just don't see this being a thing?
Yeah. So, that first small step kind of took me down the path of what I thought was going to be working in the legal field. I worked there for 2 years at the law firm. I was head paralegal. It was a fun job. My bosses were awesome. And I guess you could say I was kind of disillusioned with the work that I was doing. I really liked who I worked with. I thought it was an interesting job, but I wasn't really enamored with the career. And I was more and more confused about the thought of getting out of law school and having to then practice law, because that's what you do when you get out of law. So,
that's true.
But I was really unclear whether that's what I truly wanted to do. And so the thought of spending all that money on law school and then not wanting to practice when I got done was not worth the money.
Right. So wait, then how did you even think of law? Was that something from childhood that you were just like, I want to be a lawyer, I'm gonna lock people up, it's gonna be awesome? What? How did we get there in general?
I was a business major in undergrad, and my goal at that point was to go into corporate law, international law, something on the business side, not so much criminal related.
Gotcha.
But then that's the law firm that I worked at, that's the type of law that they practice. So that's where I ended up,
okay.
spending my time when I was in the legal field.
Right.
But it wasn't a game time decision in undergrad necessarily, but it definitely was you're coming up to graduation and you should maybe figure out what you want to do afterwards. And me not knowing what the answer to that was.
Yeah, that's relatable. Can definitely relate to that. So yeah, that's petrifying. So you were approaching graduation and you were like, ooh, we gotta figure this out.
But I was really glad that I did go that route and got a job instead of just going straight to law school afterwards, because that's kind of what a lot of people normally do, is they just hop right back into school.
Yes.
So I was glad that I took the step and got an actual job first, because it helped me realize.
Yeah. It's like, whoop, this ain't it. We gotta figure this out. We gotta figure this out. This is not it. Oh my gosh, that is so relatable. And I'm sure, I don't know if, okay, so I remember Jace being the student, or just the person in general, who, if you were to talk to him, he's super nice, super fun, but then you were you have a business side of you that's like, whatever you say is yes, sir. Like, no joke. And this is why you made such a great section leader in orchestra, because you'd be like, horns, no, and we're like, yes, sir. And then like, and you'd like, and so like, it was so believable to see you in that line of work because of your personality. You're so good at guiding people and leading people and organizing, and just very inspiring, actually, to learn from you in that regard, especially, me being like the baby and be like, oh my gosh, how do I get on Jace's good graces? And you're like, you're already on my good graces. Like, stop saying things like, I'm like, okay. You had the whole like brass section in line just by your character. And it was just amazing. So to then see you take a shift was like, wait, huh? What happened? So you had this job. You realized partway through, like, ooh, we're going to need to choose something else. So what was the process for you in trying to figure out what that something else was?
Yeah, that is what I would actually say is my true first step, because that was actually stressful. I ended up going back to Virginia and living with my parents for like 7 months without work, because I just didn't know. And I think I got a little caught up in the idea that I had to find the perfect thing right away.
Yeah.
And, that's an elusive concept when you're, what was I, like 24, 25 at that point?
Yeah.
You don't know what's perfect, but you also, there's just no, like, I don't want to say no way to get it, but there's very little chance that you're going to get something that is quote unquote perfect for your life's work by the time you're 25. And when I was at home and I was looking for work, I kind of knew there was 2 industries, I guess you could say, that I was interested in from just background in my life. And that was international development and relief, because my grandparents did a ton of work with ADRA when I was a kid, and they traveled all over the world, which sounded awesome. First off.
So for those who don't know what ADRA is, what is the acronym?
Adventist Development and Relief Agency.
Relief Agency. So it's a huge agency that's very public health based, and there's a lot. They're like the Red Cross-esque group of the Adventist Church, and so very popular. Yep. They're always going into different countries when they need relief for whatever it is, different cities, countries, states. So yeah, that's what he's talking about. That's what ADRA is. So
yeah, and so being in Virginia, my parents lived pretty close to Washington D.C., only about an hour and a half away, and so the jobs that I was looking at are for non-governmental agency or non-government organizations, NGOs, that are like ADRA, and there's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jobs that are in that field because the U.S. has tons of those organizations, and especially in Washington, D.C. So that seemed like the kind of more obvious answer to me. I was applying to tons of those things, and I thought I had, some credential as far as speaking a foreign language and having lived abroad for a year and just being excited about, throw me into a third world country or whatever it may be. I'll be excited to do that.
Yeah.
Sounds great. And then the other side was sport. After I graduated from undergrad, I got into triathlon and did several half Ironman races, several smaller races as well, and just loved triathlon, still do. Have a 3-hour bike ride scheduled for later this afternoon, so pumped for that.
Not I.
And after doing that, I was like, the sport world could be really interesting to be in too. They put on these big events and they have, people are going out there and trying to strive to be their best, and it's inspiring no matter how fast or slow that they're going. If people are striving to be the best of themselves, I think that's really awesome. I mean, my mom.
Yes.
She comes to my races, and whenever I race, she gets to the end of the day and she's like, I am exhausted because I was clapping for everybody and crying for everybody as they passed.
Oh, yeah, that's your mom. She is everyone's mom at the race. If you don't have one, she's already there. Exactly. Aww.
So, and I relate with that. I don't necessarily react in the same way, but
right.
I 100% relate with the idea that when I'm at a half Ironman race, there are some people who are finishing it in 4 hours, and there's some people who are finishing it in 7.5.
Right.
And all of those people are impressive because they're doing the best that they can, and that's awesome. So those were the two things that I was like trying to figure out.
Yeah.
The sport world is admittedly, is it smaller? I don't know if you can say it's smaller. I guess the sport world that I was looking at was smaller because I didn't really want to go to the NBA or the MLB or NFL. That wasn't really what I was interested in. I was looking more towards more broad sport and sport for all rather than just sport for the professional world.
Gotcha.
So that was my big 7-month uncomfortable to myself step that led me here eventually.
Yeah. So like that time frame at home, was that, did you feel like you'd let anyone down or yourself down, or like did you go through the I'm embarrassed stage for not, doing what my classmates are doing, or I mean I would in that season, and I think I've definitely gone through that for my personal Paso experience, but like I just, because you're so, and I guess I asked because I see you always as this go-getter, you're always doing something, so to not be doing something, I could potentially see that being kind of sad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to not compare yourself to other people who have kind of either always known what they wanted to do or found out what they wanted to do in college, or like found their specific niche in college. Mm-hmm. And since I didn't find that, I was like, boy, I'm behind. And, my dad was a veterinarian, and his story that he would always tell my brother and I, which, I mean, this is no fault to him by any means, but his story is that, like, he knew he wanted to be a veterinarian from the time he was, like, 5 years old. And I was like, well, when I was 5, I wanted to be a dolphin trainer, so I feel like that's not the same kind of, like, career trajectory.
I'm dead. Oh, my goodness. I mean, it could have worked out. You could have been working at SeaWorld right now. I'm just saying. It could have happened. That could have been your
probably wouldn't hate it. Yeah.
SeaWorld, if you're listening. Table that.
Part-time volunteer, as long as you come to Colorado.
Hey, there you go.
So yeah, I mean, it definitely was. It wasn't the easiest, and I guess the thing that made it slightly easier possibly was that I was back in Virginia, where none of my friends were, and basically the only people that lived there that I knew or wanted to talk to that I knew were my parents. Right. And everyone else was out living their own lives and being in graduate school or doing whatever they were doing. And so I just had to be Instagram happy for a little while.
Yeah.
And, 7 months is in reality not that long, but it felt long for sure. And without for sure knowing what I wanted to do or having interviews and then perhaps not turning out, it was kind of like, well, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do here?
Yeah, man. Okay. That is very relatable for just for me personally. 'Cause I think I went through something similar towards the end of my senior year where I was like, pre-med, absolutely not. But I have no idea what to do. So I need to figure this out at some point.
Yeah.
And just having that sabbatical year, I guess, to figure it out was difficult, knowing that my classmates kept going and or they went to medical school or they went to pharmacy school or they got a job or whatever, and I'm just like just at home figuring it out. So, and then not comparing yourself to anyone was, in the family, outside of the family, compared to your parents, compared to your siblings, compared to cousins. Just, it's a lot. It's a lot to try to process. And looking back, it's like, man, I didn't need to put that pressure on myself. But that's what you expect yourself to, because that's kind of what college sets you up for. It's like, by the end of this experience, you should know exactly what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And when that didn't happen, that is life-shattering. You're just like, whoa.
Yep.
I didn't do my college experience the way I was told I should, or the outcome was incorrect somehow, and I need to now figure it out outside of the context of my university. Yeah, that's a lot to process. So during those 7 months, were you just doing that research, NGOs and looking at, different sports avenues to, be a professional? How did you, by the end of that 7 months, what happened there? What was the process of finishing the 7 months? What did that look like?
Yeah. So it was, I probably didn't cast the net super wide as far as the sport world goes.
Okay.
I was looking at working in Ironman, or I wanted to work in the Olympics, which not a very large net in the sport world, but it was the net that I cared about. So I applied for work at several of our national governing bodies, which are our smaller sport organizations that govern just a specific sport kind of under the Olympic umbrella. Okay. So I work at the USOPC, and we oversee Team USA. And then we have, I think it's like 50, 52, something like that, national governing bodies, which are organizations like USA Cycling or USA Track and Field, or, name a sport and just put a USA in front of it and you probably named an NGB. So I was looking at jobs in those fields. Okay. A lot of people who come to this industry are coming from competing in sports or competing at the NCAA level in undergrad, who have a sports management major or even a sports management graduate degree.
Oh, wow.
And I had an international business degree with a French minor and pre-law, so it wasn't, exactly the same.
Yeah.
By any means.
Yeah.
But by no means do I think that hampered me. Like, I have business acumen and knowledge, and I can compete with the best of them at that level. So I was just looking for anything that I thought I was qualified for within the movement, because I just wanted to get my foot in the door. Because I knew once I got my foot in the door, I'd be able to stay there for a few years and probably move on to something bigger and better at some point. But I quickly realized, I'd say 5 or so months into my 7-month stint, I was still applying for NGO positions, but I was pretty honed in on the Olympic movement, and because it's meant so much to me for the longest time anyway. So I figured I might as well give it a go, since I'm probably not going to be an Olympic athlete. Might as well work for the organization.
You never know, Jace. You never know. The Lord works in very, very mysterious ways. So you don't Don't write that off just yet.
Yeah, if he wants to set me up on a curling team, I will for sure let that happen.
Yes, Lord, whatever you say. Let your will be done.
I will sweep large stones across the ice for you. Thank you.
Let the church say amen. That was great.
So this job, kind of nearing the end, I think it was like March of 2016, came up, and I thought it was a really interesting position. It had a lot to do with data and telling stories with data, and being a good kind of gatekeeper for generic data at the USOPC. I mean, that's about as specific as I could see it at that point, because I was not, a data architect in undergrad. That's an actual thing that people study for in undergrad and can do, and those are very, very smart people. But I was like, I can give that a go. I understand, the language of finance, and that was a big ask, was to understand how the Olympic organization allocates its funding.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was really interesting because, I didn't necessarily know how the movement, which is another way of saying the Olympic and Paralympic Committee, we call ourselves the movement sometimes, the Olympic movement, which I also like, by the way.
I love that too. I was about to say, I was like, I love that messaging. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it looked intriguing to me. So I gave it a go. The really nice thing about this application process was it was more than just a resume cover letter, the standard whatever you have to submit. They wanted you to submit both of those things as well as a project about data and how well you can interpret data. And so I was like, this is the way that I can get in there, because I know I can be just as smart, or I can work just as hard as any person coming out of a sport management degree in undergrad. But this is how I can prove myself without having any of the pedigree that some of those other people had, like coming from big name schools or playing in the NCAA or whatever it might have been. I was like, this is how I can prove myself. Super enjoyed the project. It was awesome. They work with a program called Tableau, which is kind of like Excel, but better.
Okay.
Kind of like, well, yeah, sure, that'll work. And so I put together a presentation. I thought it was, fairly comprehensive, and I thought it was really interesting. I thought it showed some interesting, data point stories that they could take some perhaps actionable item from, and got an interview.
Okay.
Which, yeah, stomach just about fell out of my body, because I was like, oh my goodness, it's the Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Or at that time, it was just the Olympic Committee, but it was like everything that I could have dreamed that maybe I would get to be able to work with that organization. Did the interview, it went super well. They called me back the next day. This is a crazy story, by the way.
I'm already on the edge of my seat. What?
So I interviewed for the position. Interview went super well. They called me back the next day, and the recruiter who was in charge of the position said, we really like you. We think you're a little bit untested in this world, which was 100% true. And we really want to keep in touch with you, but we're going to go with somebody else for this position. Okay. Someone with a little more experience and understanding in the data world. But we have an internship that might be coming up in August that we'd really love to keep you in mind for. So when that comes up, please apply.
Oh.
And I was like, it's a no, but it's not a goodbye forever.
Right.
So I was like, I think that this is my foot in the door. I think I've finally made it to the point where this could be something.
Yeah.
Called my parents, was super excited. Called my brother, was super excited. Then they called me back the next day.
What?
And I was like, what is Colorado calling me for? And she was like, hey, there were two people in the sport performance department who didn't want to give up on your application, and they think that you're still a good fit for this position. so we want you to interview with the same guy you interviewed with yesterday and these 2 other people on the phone. What? And I was like, okay,
sure. Right? Okay. All right. Tell me when. Right now? Okay, yeah.
Right. Are you going to patch me over? Okay. So I interviewed with them again. I thought that one went better than the first. It was really a great interview. They were awesome people, just super smart. And I wanted to learn from them because I think they were brilliant. And so that one went super well. She called me back. The recruiter called me back the next day. And she was like, hey, so they loved you. I think we're going to go with someone with a little more experience for this role.
Okay. All right.
And I was like,
they loved you.
Hello?
We're picking someone else. What happened? Okay. Let's try this again.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, it's not going exactly how I pictured it, but that doesn't mean that it's not moving forward necessarily.
True.
It just means that it's going to look differently than it might have. So, I mean, she mentioned the internship again, and the fact that I may be coming up in August, which was relieving that they weren't just, going to cut me out again.
Right.
So I got off the phone with her and I called my parents and I was like, well, I'm confused, but I'm glad that I got to talk to those people because now, when that internship comes up in August, then they'll remember me. They'll already have talked to me. We won't have to go through the whole, who are you? Tell me about your background. We can talk maybe a little bit more about what is this role and what do you expect from this person?
Right.
My mom was like, you know what? You should just go, or maybe it was my dad. Anyway, one of the parental units was like, maybe you should go out there and just see them in person so that they can put an actual face because these were just phone interviews.
Right.
And I was like, sure, I've got no money left in my savings account, but let's do it.
Right.
And so at the generosity of my wonderful parents, my mom and I flew out. I emailed the recruiter immediately after I got off the phone with my mom. And I said, I'm going to be there on Monday. I think this was literally Thursday. And I said,
gosh.
I'm going to be there on Monday. I would love if you could set up some appointments with the 3 people that I met over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. I explained to her that I would love to be able to just have my face in front of them and, get a feel for Colorado Springs. Should I be moving out here in August? And just so that they can put a face with a name. And she's like, great. So she set up the appointments, which I was thinking that was going to be a lot harder than it was, but it was no trouble at all.
Wow.
Yeah. So my mom came out here. It was the first week of May by this point. And I don't remember what day it was we flew out, but we got to Colorado Springs. It literally snowed 8 inches in May.
Oh.
Which, after having lived here for 4 years now, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Basic. It's nothing.
Yeah. Just a May day. And Monday morning rolls around. We had gone to one of the local churches on Saturday, which was super fun, just to, get a feel for the community out here.
Yeah.
And then we had driven around to look at the housing situation in Colorado Springs on Sunday, just to see what prices were and where were the good places to live and whatnot. And then Monday rolls around. I get dressed up in my nicest suit, which is hilarious because I literally wear, well, not T-shirts, but I wear polos to work every day and whatever now. As long as it says USA on it, I wear it. So
that is the best.
So I had a breakfast meeting with the 3 who I had talked to, and we talked. He was a super nice guy. He was the director of business intelligence, which is what the department was that this position was going to be in. Mm-hmm. He came from Exxon or something like that. Absolutely brilliant. And he very, very loud. Literally no shame about being loud either. And it's awesome. So we had breakfast. We went back to his office, and we were just kind of sitting in his office. We were talking for a little bit, and he was like, well, great. I super enjoyed having breakfast with you, and I just wanted to give you this. And he slides this paper across to me, and it's a job offer for the job that I had been interviewing for. And I just, like, read it, looked over it, and I was so confused. And he was like, do you have any reaction at all? And I just looked up at him, and whispering, which I won't whisper because we're on a microphone, but whispering, I was like, I can't talk. I cannot talk. Because I was absolutely floored. And
I'm floored.
Here we are, 4 years later.
Jace, I feel like crying. That was like, oh my, like the second you said that, I was just like, that was like a movie. I can't believe that happened. That is miraculous, Jace.
No kidding.
You just, what?
And then, hilariously, my mother and I, so my mom is sitting out in the car waiting for me, and I love to break good news to them in ways that are very backhanded and in ways that they won't suspect it coming, because I love to see their reaction.
Yes.
So I got back into the car, and I was like talking to her about the leftovers from breakfast and how good they were.
Oh my word.
And then I'd like slide the paper over to her, and she just burst into tears.
Yeah.
Immediately.
See? Yeah. 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then, of course, after that, now the Olympics in my family is a just under religious type of following for us.
That is amazing.
I generally spend 2 weeks in tears because I think everything is inspiring.
Oh.
And so immediately after we get this news, my mom and I have to head over to the training center because they're going to give us a tour, and we're going to go see like where the athletes are training, which is just the coolest thing, no matter if you have a job here or not.
Right.
It's awesome. And they are showing like this, it's like a promotional video that's before their tour, and there's other people who are there with their families that are just touring around, and my mom and I are sitting in the back just like, crying.
I can't believe this is happening. Oh my gosh. I'm wow. I can't imagine having been you in that moment, because I'm over here just like, I hope someone out there who makes movies heard this podcast, because that was a movie. That is a Hollywood plot, but real life. That's like the last 10 minutes of the movie where you're like, so is he going to get the job or not? Like, what is happening?
And everyone's crying.
Yes. And then the credits are rolling and you can't leave the theater because you're still crying. Oh my gosh. Jay, that is phenomenal. That is an amazing story to hear. Oh my gosh. That's amazing to me,
yeah,
because
and I mean, it's been an absolute dream. I've been with the organization for 4 years now. I made it to Korea for the games in 2018. I went to Peru in 2019 for the Pan American Games, and that was the first time I made it into like the Olympic Village, or the Pan American Village in that case. And then in January of this year, I went to the Youth Olympic Games in Switzerland, and I was going to go to Tokyo this year, but since the games are postponed, that'll have to wait till next year. So yeah, I mean, it's an absolute dream for sure, and it's so fun to do those types of things. And then as well, I get to practice being a business person and helping people do their jobs more efficiently and better in my normal everyday life.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like, that was, I can't process this, Jace. This is just amazing to me, though, because, there are things that surprise me every day about life. And I've had, I mean, I don't work for the Olympics or anything, but like thinking of where you've come from, the background that you have, the credibility that you have, the qualifications that you have, and then something just doesn't work out based on all those things, and you end up in this season of limbo. Like, I have no clue where I'm going, and it somehow turns into this trajectory of how on God's green earth did I get over here? Like, I could not have made this up. I don't understand. There's no processing how I got from here to all the way over there at all. And your story, your First Paso story has a lot of faith involved, because after like phone call number 2, I'd have been like, all right, y'all need to figure yourselves out, because I don't know why you keep calling me every day. Like, if you just want someone to talk to, just tell me, but this is not the way we're going to do this. Like, you know, I would have been frustrated at the back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, but just the idea that you stayed positive, like that blows my mind. You stayed positive despite the confusion. I think that's what's inspiring to me, and it turned out to work in your favor, and now you're just like literally having a blast doing what you do, you know. And you know, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when we were in undergrad, you probably would have laughed your butt off if someone said, hey, you're going to work for the Olympics one day. I'm like, you're so funny. Look at you speaking nonsense. And now it's like, no, really? No, I am. That's crazy. I don't know how you can, like, wake up I would be pinching myself every day if I realized that was happening. It's like 4 years in, still here. What? You know? It's just phenomenal. So, like,
I definitely have that, you know, those pinch yourself mornings. I definitely have those when I'm packing to go to a games, or honestly, even when I have a meeting at the training center, because I work at HQ, which is downtown Colorado Springs, and it's just an office building, and it's cubicles, and it's offices, and, you know, there are pictures of Olympians on the walls, which is inspiring, but it's not like, you know, Michael Phelps is not swimming in the lane next to my desk, because that is not a thing.
Right.
But if I have a meeting at the training center that day, you know, I get to go over and I'll meet with somebody, say, in sports medicine, to talk about their data and how they use data. And you just kind of walk onto this ground that is like, this is where it happened. This is where Olympians walk, and this is where they're training to be their best every single day. And it's just incredible to be around that. And then I have the incredible privilege to be able to eat in the dining hall where they eat when they're on complex. And it's just, you know, you sit up in Adrian and you're like, what? What?
Yes. It's like, oh my gosh, so-and-so is eating over there. Oh my gosh. He loves sandwiches.
How is that him?
I'm like, oh my gosh, it's real life. It's like, you're not just on TV, you're in the dining room with me, you know. And it's just the thing for me, having known you for so long, that stands out a lot to me is, which may not feel like this for you, but from outside it looks like that, your consistent level of confidence in your ability to do what you know you can do. That is something that not everyone has. And I don't know if it was ever a like fake it till you make it type of thing, but it's just like ever since I've known you, I was like, nah, he means business, and he knows he means business, and he's confident in that. And that pushed you through even the interviews. You're just like, I mean, they keep calling me, so obviously they're interested in some way, shape, or form. Just that mentality to not be like, maybe I'm really not that good, or maybe I need to look somewhere else. You never seemed to have that negative sense of I'm not capable, which is something I deeply admire you for, because that's something I always struggle with. I'm like, how does he do this? how did you just know that you're good at what you do? It's just astonishing to me.
I feel like that's something that came up in orchestra a lot. Like, you know, where you and I are sitting next to each other, and I have this crazy Shostakovich solo that's about to come up, and you're all looking over me like, are you sure you've got this? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I do. And then I play it, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes, that is true. Okay, so I do remember those moments where you realize, like, I am the solo, and then homeboy has me coming in on a high B flat to do this solo, and it's like pianissimo, and it has to be gorgeous. And that, I think literally that was probably the only moments for me that I ever saw you be like, and I'm like, oh, was he gonna? But we were super supportive of you because we knew that you were bomb at what you did on the horn. It's like, dude, you're gonna kill it. Don't be nervous. And you're like, oh no, but you always did so great. And over the years that we played together, every year you could be talking to me, cracking up, and then literally 2 beats before you're just like, what? And it's like, how do you do that? Because you weren't like that when we started. You'd be like, wait, hold on, pause the conversation. Let me like zone in, and then by the end you're like, nah, I got this. This is nothing. So that's just amazing. Even from that perspective, it was kind of like you were set up in such a way that you had to practice having to be confident. Like, you didn't actually have a choice to not be, because you were first chair horn. Like, that is your job. Your job is to be confident in what you do, because so much, rides on you for the brass section, the horn section, the orchestra. So you got a lot of practice in that, where the rest of us got to hide within your horn sound. And so we didn't have to practice that all the time.
Not even. None of y'all were hiding. We were all transcending together.
We did. We did. We just like, just amazing in the background and make people cry, and just amazing times. But like, I don't know. I think that's something that to hear your story, where it's super relatable in the sense that not knowing where you start and being in this, especially, I'm sure there are people listening that are in that interim stage where it's just like, I honestly have no idea which direction to step in. I feel very lost. But that doesn't mean that the tools that you have are to go to waste. Someone is going to need those tools. It's just the confidence in knowing that what you have is useful and necessary somewhere. We just have to figure out what that something and where that somewhere is. There's a time component there where it's like, you want to be on time. There's that sense of on time. I think the older that we get, the more annoying that sounds, just because there isn't really a on time. It's just your time. Like, the time that lines up for you is on time, right? So the comparison aspect of like, oh, they moved on. Well, they're in their own lane. They're doing whatever they're supposed to be doing. You're not in their lane with them. So you're still on time. Like, you're not late. This is your story. This is your, trajectory. So I'm so inspired by this whole story. I'm just baffled by it, because it's one of those plot twist stories where you think life is going to go in a very sad direction. It's like, man, I spent all this money for education and I'm not even going to use it because I hate it. And then it's like, just kidding. You're going to go to the top, and you're going to soar, and you don't know it yet. So yeah. What would be your advice for someone who might be, because there's several different people that we could talk to just based on your story. There's like the people who are in their program and they realize that they probably shouldn't be studying what they're studying, or they're getting towards the end of graduation and they're like, well, crap, like, I'm this far in and I'm pretty sure what I've signed up for is not at all what I'm going to be doing when I graduate. There's those people to, talk to. And then there's the people who have already done that and they're in that 7 months at home with mom and dad stage of life. And it's like, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm researching. I don't know what I could be good at. This is all I've ever thought of. So the idea of something different is really scary. And, that stage of life. And then there's the people who are in the process of interviewing for things that they might have skills for, but might not necessarily be completely lined up with the job description. Like, what would you say to these people in these different stages of life? Because that's a lot to try to process while trying to still be confident in yourself.
Totally. There's a couple things that people told me during that time period. One of them, they didn't tell me until afterwards because it wouldn't have applied while I was in the stage, but it makes complete sense on how you get through that stage. And it's like a little funny anecdote, but it's the difference between try and triumph is a little umph.
I like that.
So put in a little bit of work and do something and ta-da, triumph.
I love that.
The other thing I think that, yeah, it's so fun, right?
That's great.
The other thing I think that was really, really good to think about at time, and honestly, even now, I'm not going to be in this job that I'm in currently forever. I would love to stay with the organization for the rest of my career, but just being okay with not necessarily perfect is an important thing to understand, because it's hard to even know what perfect is when you are in undergrad. You may have an idea of what perfect is, and then it might look very different, as in you go and work at a law firm for 2 years, and you're like, oh, are we sure? So, I think being okay with just a little bit of just okay is kind of all right. That's not to say that you should undershoot or be okay with bad, but if it's a job that's like, that's probably the organization that I want to be a part of, that's probably the industry that I want to be a part of, that's probably whatever else you want to add to the end of that sentence that you want to be a part of, jump in at whatever level you can get in currently and work up to whatever that perfect job is. But don't be too caught up trying to make it perfect right away, because that's a really hard thing to get. I haven't even found that yet, and I'm in a job that I love and in an organization that I love, but I don't even know what perfect is. Like, that's a hard thing to understand. So I think those are the two things that I would say.
Wow. That is, yeah, those are such important lessons. Just the idea that, try and triumph. I'm going to remember that forever. That is such a cute phrase. And it sounds like something that you tell your children, like, the difference between try and triumph is the oomph. Like, go out there and, put your little oomph into it, kiddo, But it applies to just life in general, even as adults. We're like grown children, and we're just trying out here. Everyone's trying their best to be the best versions of themselves that they can, and sometimes that means being in an interim stage and being okay with that and still trying. Trying doesn't necessarily look the way that we envision it, but it doesn't mean that it's not taking us to where we're supposed to be going, and not trying to be perfect from the get-go. That's my problem. Like, I want to do everything perfectly, and I want it to be the best from the start. And I realize that the more I try for that, the worse it actually gets. Like, it's going in the wrong direction because I'm overshooting my capabilities based on where I'm at. It's like, whoa, like, let's start where we are. Let's not start where we want to be in 5 years from now. That's gonna take you backwards. So let's take it where we are now and soak it in, so that way we can build the necessary tools and wisdom and understanding to be at that level that we envision. And then by the time we get up there, we're like, man, there's still so much more I could be doing, or what I thought was just so amazing and just glorious from down there. Now that I'm up here, it's like, oh, well, it's not, okay. Like it wasn't as
mountain to climb.
Yeah, there's still more mountains to climb, and and that's exciting. That's exhilarating, and the ability to not be so hard on yourself at the beginning of what feels like a start over. I think that's where most people get into this negative downward spiral of like, is anything that did anything that I did count for anything? Or is it all thrown in the trash and I've just wasted time that I now need to learn something completely different and start all over? And you know what? To be honest, even if that's true, it doesn't mean you're not on time, because you've learned something. It's just not what you ideally or initially thought you were supposed to be learning. But there's something about what we've done. I mean, we know people who've changed their majors 17 times in undergrad, and like, but each time they learn something new about themselves. They've learned a new skill. They have a better understanding of people within a certain field that, they might not have had if they had not tried this. And it's all about, it's exploring, it's growing. It's necessary to be able to do that, even when you feel like I've always known what I'm going to do. But there's a sense of, do I know myself? Do I trust what I know about myself and the skills that I've collected over the years? Am I confident to use what I have? And even if I have to take what I've learned and reconstruct it to fit this new venture, is that bad? Is that really a loss? And most of the time it's not.
Right.
So I don't know. Just hearing your story is so exciting. It's so exciting. And I'm so proud of you. If I have not told you this, I'm so proud of you, where you've gone, what you're doing, and you're enjoying it. And it's, you could have totally gone everyone knew I was supposed to, do law or whatever, and then I didn't. You could have done that, and we could have been talking about how we still don't know what we're doing in life, but you decided to venture out and go like, but there's other things in me that make me tick, and sometimes that's what we have to do. It's like, I have a passion for something. Something inside of me makes my heart skip beats because I'm so excited and passionate about it. How do I make that into something that helps me pay the bills, but I'm having fun paying my bills? We have to explore, write down lists, pros and cons, passions, dislikes, disinterests, and learn more about ourselves. And even when you do that, it might just be a stepping stone into something else that you're supposed to be doing. But each step of the way is so important for us, and we don't want to beat ourselves up because of a timetable or an expectation.
Yep.
Or any of those things. So, man, yeah, I really want this to be a movie, Jace. Like, I'm so excited about it. I just want it to be a movie. It's so inspiring. I hope you wrote things down. Like, do you have a journal? Because I just feel like
I'm not great about journaling, but when I do get into, situations where, like, going to a games where I want to remember those times, I'm not necessarily going to journal about me standing at my desk.
Right.
For most of the day.
Yeah.
But when I'm at a games, like, I do really care about, today I stayed up until 2 a.m. because one of the athletes had to go to something, and I was waiting for them. And when they got back, we talked about something about their day, and they were glad to have somebody to confide in for just 10 seconds before they crawled back into bed to compete the next day. And I'm like, oh my word, that was an athlete I talked to.
Yeah.
it doesn't, like, it's literally like, I mean, not to belittle any sport, but say it's like a badminton athlete. I don't know anything about badminton.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know who the players are, and
right.
The United States is not exactly a powerhouse of badminton, but I was just like, oh my word, it's an athlete? That's so cool.
Yes. It's like it's someone who has worked really hard to be their best self, and like we've had a moment, you know, and that's so inspiring. No matter what anyone's doing, like you could literally be a janitor and be the absolute best janitor, know about how to clean anything under the sun and be passionate about it. And I'm that person who's like, oh my gosh, they're so good at like getting things out of things. You know, like how do they know these things? And just the passion that people have for what they do and being confident in it, whether or not it's something that people think is, you know, so fantastic or they want to belittle what you do. That shouldn't matter because it's what makes you tick. They don't have to tick for you. You need to tick for yourself, right? And be so passionate about it, know the ins and outs of it, and embrace that part of you that is brilliant and knowledgeable and capable and passionate about your craft. Like, to me, I'm right there with you when you could break down your craft to me all day. I don't care what it is, and I am inspired by your passion for your own craft. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, dude, you're going to go far. I have a feeling this is nothing. That you might think this is huge, but I have a feeling this is just like basic. There's something else that's coming. Something else has to come from this.
Oh boy, I don't know what that's going to be because it's got a lot to live up to.
But I don't know, it's just, you're so good at what you're doing. Someone is going to notice it somewhere else, or like even within the same organization, and be like, we need to level you up somewhere. Like, this was great for you down here for a while, but we need to rise you up here so we can really hone in on your skills and tailor it for something that would just truly benefit the masses. And I'm just so excited for you. This is amazing. Such a unconventional story, but fantastic and inspiring nonetheless. So thank you so much for sharing your story and taking the time to chat with me about it. And man, I'm so excited. I need this to be a movie. I'm not joking. This needs to be a movie. Someone get on that. Okay, so I put my PSA out there, so don't. I'm waiting 2025 when we're all allowed to go to the theater again. I will be in the front row. Oh my word.
Sure better not be that long.
Rough. That would suck. Oh my gosh. Rough times. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. If there are any topics that you want discussed in the future, hit me up on Twitter or on Facebook at First Paso. And if you've had similar situations like Jace, or you've made it to this dream job that you never really expected getting, but it's in your hands and you're living your best life, or maybe you're back in the I don't think I'm going down the right path season of life. Whatever season of life that you're in, shoot me a message. Let me know how that's going. Let me know how it went, the pros, the cons, and I'll share some of that in a future episode, because we need to learn from each other in these situations. They can be really difficult, especially when you think that you're the only one doing this, or you're the only one in this season of life that you're not really sure where you're going. A lot of people are sitting in that season of life, and you're not the only one. It's totally okay to be in that season. So let's inspire each other through those times. And until next time, we'll see you guys soon. Jace, we will talk soon. We need to talk more. I just need to call you to be like, can you tell me that story again so I can be inspired to do what I need to do today? Dude, awesome. We'll talk soon, okay?
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Bye.
Bye.